All right, welcome back. The show is Africa Daily on Africa Global Radio, and I am Barry Musa. Time now for our discussion zone. Now, yesterday, the 23rd of May, 2021, was World Obstetric Fistula Day. Now, this is actually a health condition that's very prevalent amongst women. Now, obstetric fistula is one of the most serious and tragic childbirth injuries. A hole between the birth canal and bladder and or rectum. It is caused by prolonged obstructed labor without access to timely, highly quality medical treatment. It leaves women with incontinence problems and often leads to chronic medical problems, depression, social isolation, and deepening poverty. Now, we had the opportunity to speak to an expert, an obstetrician, who is also a gynecologist based in New York City, Dr. Michael Ihemaguba. Now, he walked us through this whole condition and how, you know, grave of a condition is, and also made mention of how one can correct such a health, condition right here on the Africa Daily Show. So I'm going to be airing that, which we had earlier with him. So listen up. Basically, we want to find out what, obstetric fistula is.
Okay. In the layman's term, a fistula is like a channel
Okay.
connecting two systems or two organs. There are several of them that we have in obstetrics,
Okay.
which are fistulas or holes, channels connecting, say, the vaginal cavity
Okay.
with the bladder at the top of it, or the vaginal cavity to the rectum, or the vaginal cavity to the colon. So, and that's how they devise their names. The one connecting the vagina with the bladder we call vesico-vaginal fistula.
Okay.
The one connecting it with the rectum we call recto-vaginal fistula. That's how we give their names.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So by this, it means that the obstetric fistula has different types by mentioning these ones you just mentioned. Is that correct?
They are really the same, but it's defined by the organs from which
Okay.
the channel is connected. If the
Okay.
vagina is connected to the bladder by this fistula, is given that name.
Okay. Okay.
But pathophysiologically they are the same.
Right.
Same mechanism. Yes.
Right. Right. So, doctor, what are some of the symptoms one needs to look out for?
Um, Most of the time, because it's a connection from one organ to the vaginal cavity,
Mm.
then the symptoms are related to the organs with which they are connected. For instance, if a woman has a fistula connecting the bladder with the vagina,
Okay.
there will be passage of urine through the vagina. The woman will feel like when she coughs or when she's urinating, the part of some of the urine is coming not from where it's supposed to come, but through the vaginal cavity.
Okay.
And when the fistula is connecting the vagina with the rectum,
Right.
she'll feel like stool is coming from the vaginal cavity. Those sort of things.
Right. Right. So
Yes.
by that, um, toxic substance from the body, it's not passing through the right channel.
It is passing through but some of it.
Some
Some
of
of it
it.
goes through the vaginal cavity. Yes.
Right.
For example, stool. Yeah,
Mm.
she discharges stool through the vaginal cavity, which is not the right channel
Mm.
for it to pass through,
Right.
and that causes problems, infections, and vaginal odor
Okay.
and discomfort and stuff like that.
Great.
Yes.
Now, also, could you tell us among which age group of women does it really affect the most?
It the most will be the young, and one of the factors that predispose women to this is like what we call immature pelvis. Somebody who marries very young or who has a
Okay.
baby very young, and the pelvis is not very mature, and the baby is having difficulty getting through the vaginal cavity, and then of course after that. Some damage is done in that process, and after that, fistulas develop.
Mm.
So the very, very young and the very, very elderly who have difficulty uh, um, moving down the baby through the birth channel during delivery.
Okay.
Um, Yes, but some of the other factors that predispose to this happens mostly in areas that are not where obstetric care or prenatal care is not very well resourced.
Mm.
Um, if a woman is going to have a baby and sees an obstetrician who follows her prenatally and realizes that that baby is very big, for example,
Okay.
where there is the proportion between the size of the baby and the pelvis, then
Right.
of course a cesarean section could be planned ahead of time, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
But if that patient doesn't get good obstetrical care, then they go ahead and try to push the baby out. And by the time something is done, or even if they successfully push the baby out, damage is done in that channel.
Mm.
Yeah, those
Okay.
sort of
So
things.
so
And when people marry very young
mm.
or get married very young, the pelvis is not quite mature
Mature,
as it
yeah.
should be.
Right.
It doesn't expand like it's supposed to, and during that process, damage is done.
Right. So early
Yeah.
marriages, we're looking at teenage, girls in that regard, as well as
Yes.
the very elderly women, as you rightfully mentioned.
Yes.
Great. Could you? I mean, in your years of experience, I believe you may have come across some regions, some regions of the world that this particular case is very prevalent. If you could actually give us an overview of that.
Yes, in as the literature says, it happened quite a bit in Africa and Southeast Asia, those areas.
Mm.
In Southeast Asia, because of uh, the pelvimetry, because there are some areas. Let me go back a little bit.
Mm.
As I said, there are several factors that cause this.
Okay.
Say in African society where the prenatal care is not well resourced and
Okay.
they don't get prenatal care and like they're supposed to,
Mm.
other factors will cause it. In Southeast Asia,
Mm.
different regions, different populations have different kind of pelvises.
Okay.
The pelvis is not the same in every woman. They have different pelvises, gynecoid, platyploid,
Right.
and there are different kinds of pelvises. And when the pelvis is deemed not sufficient to carry the baby, what you do is you do cesarean section.
Okay.
And if on top of that kind of pelvimetry, the person didn't get good prenatal care,
Right.
then then they will attempt to push the baby when they're not supposed to because of the nature of their pelvis.
Right.
Then that begins to cause problems. So you see it mostly in Africa and Southeast Asia.
Mhm. So,
Hmm?
what are some of the correctional measures to, deal with such a condition? Does one have to, undergo surgery or, medication, the intake of pills, tablets, and what have you would solve the situation?
Yes. The main treatment of fistulas is surgery.
That's the main thing.
That's the mainstay. Yes,
Right.
it's surgery. The process, there are different kind of processes,
Okay.
but the main one is called fistulostomy, where you go
Fistulostomy.
in there. Yes,
Okay.
because again, the fistula is a hole,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and it depends on where it falls.
Okay.
Okay, the vagina is a channel.
Mm.
It can come in the towards the outer part of the vagina. It could come from the inner part of the vagina. It depends on where the fistula is.
Right.
Okay, so there have been things that they're doing like taking glues and gluing the hole, but
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't
It
work very
doesn't
well.
work.
Yeah,
Right. Mm.
yeah. The mainstay is surgery where you make incision and put it together and hope that it heals.
Mm.
Again, the diagnosis essentially the woman comes with a complaint of, I think stool is coming out of my vagina, or I think urine is coming out of my vagina.
Mm.
What you do then as an obstetrician, there are a number of tests, but the one we do commonly, there's one called tampon test,
Okay.
where you take a tampon that women use in their menstrual periods and put it in the vaginal cavity.
Right.
When you put the tampon in the vaginal cavity, for instance, then you put a dye into the bladder. Let's say the woman says, "I'm leaking urine."
Right.
Then you put a dye into the bladder, and then after some time, you take out the tampon from the vagina. If there is a hole connecting the bladder with the vaginal cavity, you see the dye
Mm.
on the tampon.
Okay.
And that's how you make a definitive diagnosis. There are other ways also, what we
Mm.
call cystoscopy.
Okay.
Yeah, where the urologist does cystoscopy of the bladder to see it, or where the gastroenterologist does scope of the rectum to see a hole. There are all kinds of things. But tampon test, for instance, is one of the ways to do it. Now, as I said, the mainstay of treatment of vaginal fistula
Mm.
is surgery.
Right.
There are other things they do, but that they don't work as well
Mm.
with surgery.
One, two, 1, 2, Bakwaminu. My name is Reggie Rockstone, and I'm asking everyone to tune into the Africa Global Radio.
I love Africa Global Radio.
Okay, welcome back. The show is still Africa Daily on Africa Global Radio, and I am Barry Musa. Seated ready for action on my three colleagues at Mami. Hafiz just joined us now, so let's begin conversation. Now, yesterday, as I said, is World Day to End Obstetric Fistula. Yeah, someone would say, what is that? But maybe most of our mothers out there, might have one way or the other experienced it, but may not really know that, okay, this is it or that is it, unless maybe if they have actually gone to see a gynecologist or obstetrician to actually tell them what are some of the issues here. But yeah, let's have our own take here. A very, technical conversation I had with Dr. Hafiz.
Yeah,
How are you?
I'm doing well.
A great Monday.
Yeah.
How was your weekend?
Not so bad.
Not so bad, eh?
Yeah.
Technical conversation here.
Very technical. Very technical. And I'm not even going to attempt to win the technical. Right. I'm not even going to.
I know, right?
Yes, terms in there, tongue twisters and everything.
Yeah.
Yes. And besides, I wouldn't even know what I'm talking about.
I know, right?
So, but then.
But the condition he talked about.
Yes, obstetric. What do you see? Obstetric fistula.
Fistula,
Yes, he calls it. To have a woman endure lifelong complications as a result of childbearing, it's disheartening. It's not something any woman should have to go through. But unfortunately, this is the case. This is what our women are at risk of every now and then, which is very unfortunate. And Doc broke down the case and decided to give us some understanding of the whole issue. Now he went on to mention some parts that are at risk. We are talking about Africa and Asia, Southeast Asia he mentioned, and just a little bit of more content to that. Now this is a condition that affects more than 2 million women worldwide, and annually we are talking some 50,000 to 100,000 women annually. So this is something that's a lot of women. This is the horrifying reality of some women out there, and this shouldn't be allowed to be the case. Now, like I mentioned earlier, Doc has spoken at length about the medical condition, the medical terms, and the sort of tests they carry out. So I'm not even going to go into that. But perhaps I think going on in the conversation, I'm more interested in the social consequences. Yes, being a social scientist, I think that's what my domain that is, where trying to look at the social consequences of this whole situation that women happen to find themselves. Now, if you look at everything that he's talked about, the social devastation this whole situation caused is enormous. In terms of the marital and social relationships, we've seen a lot of women who get abandoned by their husbands. Immediately the situation arises. Yes, and so they go through a lot of situation, causing them a lot of social relationships. A lot of them have been prevented from joining religious and social gatherings because they are considered unhygienic.
Right.
Imagine what that does to you, to your psyche and everything. So and in certain instances we've seen some sort of superstition developed around the whole thing. Yes, some with little or no understanding of the condition would term it as a curse or a punishment for some sins that you committed in the past. So it's really disheartening, the sort of devastation this whole thing causes. But let's get to listen further and see what happens.
All right. Thank you, Hafiz, for the opener. Let's get to Epiphania and hear what she has on obstetric fistula, which is more of a thing, of course, prevalent to women. She's a woman. She's a mother. So definitely would be very much concerned about some of the things doctors talked about. Epi, I saw your face when he was explaining. The expression there wasn't good. And I'll take kudos to all women because having, um, an excreta passing
Could you
through.
please stop? Shall we go? It's okay.
I should stop, eh?
Yeah, it's just
It's emotional, eh? Right.
it's I don't know. I Charlie, it's terrible.
Mm.
It's terrible. I
Right.
mean, I feel women living with this condition.
Mm-hmm.
My heart goes out to all of them.
Absolutely.
Because,
Absolutely.
I mean, already you have enough to deal with on your plate.
Okay.
And I mean, childbirth should be a thing of joy and happiness, and then
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
if the aftermath of that is pain and like Hafiz was mentioning, in
Complications and
certain
all.
cases, if you don't have an understanding of these things,
Mm.
it's attributed to certain things, and then in worst scenarios, you're actually more like secluded. You're isolated.
Mm-hmm.
People avoid you because they feel there's something odd wrong with you because you're not normal.
Right.
Like you mentioned, if things that shouldn't be coming out of certain places are coming out of these places,
Right.
how do you even tell your husband?
That's the thing.
And how does he even look at you?
Look at you.
If he also has no knowledge of this, how is he going to understand or relate with you? My heart goes out to women, Charlie.
All right, let's hear here. Eppie's a bit emotional here, but I understand your plight. Mommy,
Barry.
yeah, let's end it together. At least when we, my word, your word, others, half is definitely because he's going to get married and all. I'll definitely get married. So
Did you see the look he gave you?
whatever look it is, he will still get married. Well, the thing is, if you're far of it,
as like marriage who?
oh,
For
you're not gonna get
who?
married, Hafiz? Really?
When? Where?
Anyway, that's a conversation for another time. But my mate, like,
I know Hafiz is an emotionally stagnant person, so
yeah, per a definition I once read. Anyway, continue.
yeah. I mean, I think this is something we cannot talk on much because we've not experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
But I watched a video of a woman recounting her experience, and man, I mean, when
It's terrible, huh?
it's just Epi got emotional, I might just cry. She said, when it happens, you cannot sit straight. All she had to do was lie on her side for 3 months.
Whoa, 3 months.
For 3 good months. And the only thing that can fix it is a surgical procedure.
Yeah, just as Doctor
And
mentioned.
even
Yeah.
after that, it doesn't make you 100% perfect. Because she said she's got the surgery done, but she still cannot sit straight. Even up till now, she sits on her side. And she hates doing a number 2. So and one thing she said that really got to me was she envies people who can go for a long call because
Okay.
she gets the urge to go to the loo and do a number 2 and her heart just breaks all over again.
Yeah.
So you can just imagine the kind of pain that you have to go through when you should get obstetric fistula. I
Right.
mean, it's just, but I think if it's caught early, maybe something could be done. Because it happens during childbirth. So I don't know how it's not caught and they have to go back to the house and then start feeling things. Because if something should tear, if something should tear on your body, you should feel it.
Right.
And the doctor should see it because their eyes are glued on where the baby's coming
But then
from.
I think he was
as
mentioning it about your pelvic as well. You
Yeah.
know, there's this thing we have here in Africa where it's like everyone wants to be able to push the baby out. You
Yeah.
understand? And sometimes the baby is bigger. It's bigger than your pelvic canal. It's actually bigger than the, sorry to say, vaginal hole the baby's coming from. So then that means there's going to be some tear.
he gave.
I'm not talking about the tear not happening. I'm talking about the tear happens. He talked about how some women come, they after childbirth they go and then they come about like maybe some weeks or a month later and they're talking about I am seeing feces come out of this place.
Because the extent to which the tear or the damage has happened, the doctors don't, like the way you're saying, you're not talking about the tear not happening. So it's like something we see normal for the tear to happen.
And you know,
So then, even if it's to a damaging degrees, like
Yeah.
sometimes we feel like, oh, give it some time, it's gonna heal, because it's something we've got
you
used
know,
to.
this actually just actually
They
is
get
all coming
used.
back to me now when my aunt's friend, had issues with her mother-in-law because on all her babies she had were all cesarean sections. So apparently, it actually just dawned on me that it may be this situation that she's facing. Because one of the comments that the mother-in-law mentioned in front of me one day was, "Every woman said pushes, you never push. How can you feel the pain?" So I think this is also another side of psychological breakdown or mental breakdown that some of our women
exactly
would go through.
The whole thing is to shame you, and that's the social
Aspect of
we're
it.
talking about, and not just the social. We are talking about even the economic, where a lot of them
May not have.
resort to beg it afterwards. Because I mean, I like she mentioned, she said she caught a video of a woman narrating her
Yeah.
experience. I saw one as well where this woman talked about how she was a food vendor before the whole incident. Now imagine having to serve people and smell funny.
Yeah,
Then
exactly.
You're going to have to explain yourself and everything. So you understand, the situation.
He mentioned certain what you call it, technical issues in there, talking about the power, the passenger, and the passage. Very interesting bit, which I really want to play for our listeners. We'll be right back. Stay. Okay.
Yes.
You also made mention of the different or two types of pelvics. Could you elaborate further on them?
They are actually more than that. They are actually more than about total of.
Okay. So that's the
Let me use that one.
Okay. The gynocord.
Gynecoid.
Gynocoids, yes. Okay, that is
Yes.
mostly related to this particular condition, yes?
Yes. Where if you mention, because the pelvis, let's say you see a woman standing up and you're looking at it from head to toe, the pelvis from head to toe.
Yeah.
Then the pelvis becomes a circumferential object if you're looking from her head down.
Right.
It has diameter where it has a radius, like a 360-degree spherical object.
Okay.
In gynecoid, for instance, if you measure the length across and across, it's equal. Because then that begins to help the head of the baby come down the way it's supposed to.
Okay.
It begins to come down because the head has to feed the pelvis and the body has to feel the pelvis.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yes. In with the flat boy, for example, it's not that way. That some part of it posterior is longer than the anterior. That sort of thing. Those dimensions are not the way they're supposed to be. So that the head of the baby has difficulty fitting into the pelvis.
Right.
Because it has to fit in to be able to go through.
Right.
Okay. And yes, and that's one of the reasons that lack of obstetrical care is a factor in fistula formation. Because let's say a woman is in labor and you're watching that labor.
Right.
If you have proper contractions, which is what we call power, because the contractions propels the baby out.
Okay.
If you have proper contractions, that labor or that baby has to come down the pelvis and the vaginal channel at a particular rate.
Okay.
And if, say, you check the woman now and you check her again in 2 hours, that labor should have progressed at a particular rate. The baby would have come down.
Right.
If you do that, for example, and you don't get that sort of descent of the baby that you expected, then you begin to suspect that something is wrong.
Right.
Either the contractions are not the way they're supposed to be, and in obstetrics, there's a catheter we put in to measure the contraction, what we call power, as I said.
Okay.
And if you think you're getting enough power, then you go back and reevaluate the baby.
Okay.
And say, is this baby by any chance very big? How much does this baby weigh?
Okay.
And there's a way to evaluate it by an obstetrician where you use your hands to do what we call Leopold maneuver. You do it and check, re-estimate the weight of the baby. And that's what we call passenger.
Okay.
The baby is a passenger. And if you do that, then you go back and check the pelvis.
Right.
What we call the passage. Okay. So in obstetrics, that's what we call the 3 P's of labor. Power, passenger, and passage.
Okay.
See, because this needs to be done. If you have a system where a woman is delivering babies without somebody to assess these things, if there's a disproportionality between the passenger and the passage, that's how these problems occur. Because then the woman continues, the labor continues, when in fact you could have done a cesarean section and stop the baby from coming from a passage that
different
it
route.
otherwise would not fill through.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Yes. So that's where pelvimetry and all those things come in.
Right,
Call it
right.
pelvimetry.
Thank you very much for that
Yeah.
clarification, Doctor.
You're
So,
welcome.
so by your submission, would you say, I mean, you made mention of how prevalent it is in Eastern Asia and Africa. So it means proper or more awareness needs to be created in that regard, yes?
Yes. Yes. But the thing about it, though, is awareness in the sense of, let me go back. Let's say, for example, the ones that I've come across, not in the United States, but say in Nigeria, where the woman has problems and they are embarrassed to come forward and say so. That's awareness in the sense of telling them that, yes, this thing that is happening, the gods are not against you or anything. It happened in the process of delivery.
Right.
If it happens, come forward. That's number one. And I've gotten reports, not firsthand, but of women who essentially, because they have these problems, their marriages break down, the husbands go and marry another wife because they're passing stool through the vagina and all this, and nobody can help them, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
Yes. So yes, awareness in the sense that these things do happen, but at the end of the day, what will solve the problem is providing proper prenatal care.
Okay, amazing.
Because that would obviate some of these problems.
Hi guys, my name is Joey B, aka your friend is saying Beezy. Log on to Africa Global Radio. A story, a growth, a future.
All right, back to the studios, and let's get back to conversations right here. We have a couple of minutes to go, so let's do this real quick. The show was Africa Daily on Africa Global Radio. Dr. Michael Ihemaguba in New York, of course, obstetrician and a gynecologist, taking us through, the condition of obstetric fistula, which is actually it's a matter of life and death, I would say, Hafiz.
Yeah, I mean, he's explained further. I'm just trying to avoid the medical jargon.
Yeah, the passenger and the power and the passage and all.
It's
Right.
not something I'm going to attempt, but basically, but he's explained it very nicely.
Right.
Nicely put to even a 5-year-old.
Yeah,
So you'd get it. You'll understand what he's mentioned. But back to the bits I am more conversant with and talking about the social aspects of it.
Right.
And I think he mentioned a bit of
the
it
latter
in there,
part, yes.
talking about, the sort of the way we mystify,
Some
these
of these
conditions,
things, yeah.
and then tend to rain cases and try engage in victim blaming.
Yeah.
That is, and he mentioned that one other thing is the mental consequence of it,
Right.
where those that suffer from this condition tend to lose their dignity as a result of it. You're having to deal with all kinds of snide remarks.
Yeah.
Yes, behind your back. That is if they still hold a scintilla of respect for you. Because others, once it's gone, then they say it to your face, and not, not and not mind the consequences. But then again, I think looking at those that suffer these conditions, there are mechanisms or coping mechanisms for those that don't even haven't gone the surgical route.
Right.
We've seen instances where talk of the fact that a lot of them keep certain strict hygiene practices, almost extreme. Yes, they've had to shower so many times a day just so they try to keep the smell at bay. Yes, some invest more in scented soaps just so they can smell fresh, and it's tiring for them. And like Ngod mentioned earlier, how the video she got, the woman struggled to pass out stool and everything. And for that reason, you have some of them even engaging in some unhealthy eating habits, just so they wouldn't have to go to the washroom to pee. Yes, and that way it leads to a lot of weight loss and everything.
Oh dear.
So it creates a whole lot of
situation,
rolling problems here and there. But like he mentioned, he went ahead to talk about awareness, and I think I think men need to start getting involved in pregnancy.
Yep.
Yes, there's a reason they encourage you to attend prenatal
Accompany your
sessions
wife, right?
with your wife. Yes, some would even advise you to change the language. It's not she is pregnant. It's like
Us.
we
are
are pregnant. So,
Right. Oh, wow.
yeah.
Right.
So Daniel is looking at me funny, but yeah.
Don't
you
worry.
soon know.
When you get there, you'll understand.
Yes, so they tell you to change the language in that regard. So,
Right.
but largely he mentioned that yes, we need to make these services available.
Yeah.
But it's high time men get involved in in the prenatal activities of their woman.
Oh,
That way you
absolutely.
get to understand, you get to live the experience.
It
You're not an
doesn't-
outsider
it
staring.
doesn't become something new to
New,
you. You
yes,
know?
and you wake up and you're like, okay, why can't I?
Why is this? and
Yes,
why
why
is
can't
that?
we do it again? So you know what? I just,
Okay, thank you, Hafiz. Thank you for that take. We don't have much time, but let me hear Epi's take. Finally, yeah, women are supposed to be encouraged enough if they have such a situation to come forward to talk about it per what Doctor made mention.
I think I want to take this from the point of view that we should actually see reasons to stop child marriage.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because half of the time it's not, I don't know, sometimes we hold on to traditional or religious stuff and use it to push these children. But it's not just about stopping, or it's about the fact that we want to prevent what you do. No, it's about the fact that there are implications
Of
that
it.
even go beyond you.
Right.
I mean, you get children being, having sexual intercourse, and this girl's pelvic is not up to anywhere, but she gets pregnant.
Yep.
And then if such things happen, just imagine the trauma she's going to go through. And this is a cycle that keeps happening over and over and over again. So
Right.
then it's like, this is what we do. Most of the things that we're trying to fight against and prevent when it comes to children, it's not just about rights or freedom or just chanting something. It's because the implications it has on their life, it goes on and on and on. I'm just imagining a girl going through this. Even the women, how are they able to deal with it?
How
and
much
just
more?
imagine a child going there, because if her pelvic is not fully developed,
Okay.
I mean, what are you talking
Problem.
about having a baby? And
All
in
right.
places where they don't have access to quality care as well, I mean, let's do the right thing.
All right, let's do the right thing, Epifania. Finally, Hafiz wants
let
to
me
top
just
it up.
quickly add to what
Okay,
she says.
right.
But in with teenagers, I mean, you are even at high risk of getting what we call, putting yourself in a condition we call the ectopic pregnancy.
Okay.
Yes.
Ectopic
pregnancy.
Okay.
So where the baby, actually forms in the fallopian tube. Yes.
Ah,
and not in
right. It
the
doesn't
uterus.
lie where it's supposed
Exactly.
to be.
So,
Right, in the which knee?
Yeah.
Are we okay here?
are you okay? So,
Which knee? Anyway, but yeah, I've heard of situations like that where the baby is not. Where is it supposed to be? In the
uterus,
womb,
the
right?
womb, yeah.
The
So
womb,
even-
rather.
Even with the womb,
Yeah.
sometimes there's some that, the head is supposed to be like this.
Yeah.
Some of them are like this.
That's
The
where you
head is
find the
actually
baby
side and
coming
side.
out
So
with
how
its
do you actually push?
with its
So you
leg
need to go
or
and then they
arm
have to
and all.
manipulate and check.
Right. So yeah, like Abby mentioned, let's do our best to actually, actually stop it. It's not about minimizing. Stop it, because they are not ready. What's the issue here? More. Let's take a final comment.
I would just like to say that women should be given the free range to make decisions concerning their body.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that because of what you said about somebody's mother-in-law
Yeah,
telling
yeah.
her to her
You
face.
can't push. Yeah.
You
So
can push. I
that's a
mean,
very
because
die-hard
who needs
statement.
to feel pain when there's an easy way to do
Right.
things?
And when it's even a condition that has led to,
And
situation.
I also
it's
think
like
more
that.
education should go into these
yeah.
type of things, because some women do not know that if you cannot push, you have to do a C-section, because
Yeah.
if you push and the baby is too big,
We could
that
damage.
you could
further.
damage that side. So I think a lot of education should go into,
Right.
especially to pregnant women. They should
Okay.
tell them if the baby is too big, it's better we cut you and take
Okay.
the baby out than you forced to push it.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Mummy, for that submission. I wonder where she learned that from. Who was your science teacher? Baby line in the knee. But yeah, the show was Africa Daily on Africa Global Radio.